Welcome to part 2 of our panel discussion on the BBC HardTalk interview between its host Stephen Sakor and Prime Minister of Armenia Nikol Pashinyan. The interview took place on August 14 of this year. In part 1, we discussed the historic background of the Nagorno Karabakh conflict and the relevant geopolitics. Now, we will bring our attention to how the media treats Armenian issues using the BBC interview as a starting point. Today, we welcome our 3 distinguished panelists. Jirair Tutunjian has been a journalist since 1968 and has taught writing at the University of Toronto. During his tenure as editor for 6 consumer and trade magazines, he won many international and local awards and reported from 110 countries around the world. Jirair is the non-fiction editor of Canada's Exile literary magazine and a judge for Exile's annual short story competition. He is a consultant and a regular contributor to Kevork.org. David Davidian is a lecturer at the American University of Armenia, teaching technology and critical thinking. He was a nuclear reactor engineer at a major US facility and holds 3 US patents. He has a long career in high-tech and an architect of IBM's federal system for the US Air Force. He has spent over a decade in technical intelligence analysis. Since 2014, he has over 40 publications and has responded to almost 800 anti-Armenian articles. David Boyajian is an Armenian-American writer. His grandparents came to America over 120 years ago from the Harpert region of Western Armenia. For many years, his investigative reports and analysis, commentaries and interviews have appeared in multitude of media outlets worldwide. As an activist, he is best known for initiating the successful international campaign against the Anti-Defamation League in 2007 for its denial and diminishment of the Armenian genocide, and its collusion with Turkey and Israel to defeat the Armenian Genocide Resolution in the US Congress. Much of David's work can be found on armeniapedia.org. Stephen Sakor, in his interview with Prime Minister Pashinyan, portrayed Armenia as the aggressor, and yet Nagorno Karabakh is in a defensive position and has no motivation to attack. According to Sakor, Nagorno Karabakh is violating a United Nations order to remove the Armenian troops from the region. What are the implications of his charges? And wouldn't such a withdrawal violate the rights of the Armenians of Artsakh and their right to self-determination?
To claim that the UN resolutions say what they say, all you have to do is actually go and read the resolutions. Of course, that's not Sakur's, I'm sure he hasn't read them, but I'm sure he has answers if someone came back and said, no, not one of the UN resolutions say that Armenia's troops should be removed. They say basically all people who are fighting, all the soldiers of all sides should vacate the battlefields. Of course, if you don't read the resolutions and you listen to someone's interpretation, oh yes, Armenia should leave. Well, yes, it does say Armenia should leave, but it also says everyone else who's fighting should stop fighting.
David Boyajian?
Well, of course, Stephen Sakor, I hardly knew of him until recently. He's an attack journalist. In that sense, he's a very interesting guy. He's very flamboyant and asks tough questions and makes presumptions before he asks his questions. So he puts the interviewee in a tough spot. There were a couple of things that Stephen Sakor said that I would just like to briefly comment on. He started off the program with Prime Minister Pashinyan as his interviewee. He started off making a comment, not a question, and he said, Armenia is fighting old battles.
Is Armenia preoccupied with fighting old battles?
Well, what does that mean? Well, to me, that means the genocide that and Sarkar is questioning whether Armenians are hung up on the genocide, whether Armenians should even be talking about it, that it implies that Armenia is the one that that is throwing a monkey wrench into Turkish-Armenian relations and so forth, even though it's Turkey that hasn't acknowledged the Armenian genocide. It's Turkey that has closed its borders with Armenia. So, as we discussed before, the genocidal threat remains. For him to depict this as an old battle is not just nasty, it's rather moronic. Another thing he said in a question to a prime minister is Sarkar said that certain human rights groups have said that Armenia has committed certain human rights violations in Azerbaijan, and he asked Pashinyan, are you going to apologize to Azerbaijan for this? Well, I mean, you know, it presumes that the human rights violations that these Western groups have cited are entirely correct, and it's kind of one-sided. And I think Prime Minister Pashinyan tried to bring this out, that it's actually Azerbaijan that has committed the human rights violations against Armenians for the last 30 years. So Sarkar is kind of he's a nasty man. I think Prime Minister Pashinyan actually did a good job overall responding to Sarkar's provocations. I think Pashinyan kept his cool, was rather diplomatic. Maybe he shouldn't have spoken in English, which is not his best language. But overall, overall, I would say I blame Sarkar and his flamboyance, and I think Pashinyan did a rather good job all in all.
Yeah, no, David, if I could, I tend to agree with you. You know, there are, it's clear that, you know, Pashinyan did some of his homework, or someone did help him with, someone helped him out, because there's a few things he said. And, but the thing is that, again, this is, a lot of this is based on experience. How do you respond to an ultra aggressive, adversary? And that's basically what it was. Because there are a few things he said, and I wasn't surprised. They are accurate. Well, and he said, peace isn't one-sided, and, Pashinyan said that twice. He really should have pounded him on it, but he didn't. Basically, Sarkar was saying, well, what are you going to do about it? How about peace? And, Pashinyan at least twice said, peace isn't one-sided. He should have pounded that really hard. That was a good answer. It really was.
Mr. Tutunjian, please tell us about the role that media has played in representing the Karabakh conflict. What is considered professional journalism? Were there any journalistic standards violated by Stephen Sarkar? And are there any examples of unprofessional behavior on his behalf?
I have to take a deep breath because this is a long, big question and a long answer. First, let me talk about journalistic principles. Of course, truth, accuracy, objectivity, accountability, and finally responsibility. Mr. Sarkar trespassed on all of them. And to save time, I will give one or two examples of each trespass rather than make a long list of what he did, what he said. The truthfulness, number one. It's what David Boyajian mentioned, that right before the interview, he already had his confined opinion about the situation, calling us, what he said, it meant we're the aggressors. We are looking for trouble. We are the ones who are fighting all the wars. It's of course, it's a lie. We are not fighting any war. The government of Armenia wants to make peace with Turkey. and wants to make peace with Azerbaijan. They are the aggressors. We are not. Also, there is a sin of omission. There is sin of commission and there is sin of omission, things that he didn't say. When he accused us of being the aggressor, he was being untrue, because for years Armenia has been asking for international monitors to demonstrate who is starting the shooting. He completely, when Pashinyan addressed that or tried to, he interrupted him. He wouldn't want to listen to it. And then the way he looked at this story, he picks the United Nations, which David Davidian showed that it is a selective and erroneous quote. But the way Sakur was depicting it, it was Armenia's fault. Number two, about objectivity. Again, he started the story where he wanted, with United Nations, with Artsakh starting the war. We are the ones who starting the war. He did not go to the root of the problem, where this started, where the conflict started, the illegality of taking Armenian land and giving it to Azerbaijan. Forget that this was done by their enemy, Joseph Stalin, somebody they hate, the West hates. Still, they recognize that illegal act as acceptable. Okay? Now, objectivity exaggerates Iran's and Armenians' relations. As David Davidian said, our trade with them is minimal compared with Iranian, Azerbaijani. Again, he depicted us as friendly with Iran. By the way, what's wrong with being friendly with Iran? Just because he doesn't like it, or people in the West don't like it, or government don't like it, it doesn't make it a wrong decision. Also, he completely ignored that Armenia is landlocked and blockaded, and Iran is one of the two outlets that Armenia has. And he expects us to block that and have only Georgia, which is also a suspect outlet. Completely, Armenian interest, logical interest, completely irrelevant as far as Sakur goes. Sakur I think he's the highest paid British journalist. He's an establishment man. He's a Cambridge and Harvard or Yale man. He's gone to the public school. He's as establishment as you can get. By the way, while he's asking all these questions, you try to get his income, you won't find it. It is still being re-evaluated, the internet said. He is hiding this important fact, how much he makes, while he goes around attacking left and right. The accountability. Accountability basically means you have to prove and then apologize if you made a mistake. You have to stand behind what you said. Well, he not only doesn't do that, he also lied. He lied publicly. After this session with Pashinyan, he wrote in his Twitter that the response from Armenia and Azerbaijan was extraordinary. What he was implying is that it was great, positive response. Well, it wasn't. Anybody could tell him that there is no way Armenians would have approved the way he handled this thing. Yet he lied. This is no other word for it. He tried to persuade his followers that his interview was successful. Even in Armenia, people loved what he did. But this is a lie. This is not being an accountable person. Then you have to be responsible. That's an important thing. When you say Armenia or Artsakh should be returned or not returned, given to Azerbaijan, you have to be responsible and say, what are the repercussions of this? You just don't say, do it. 140,000 Armenians are going to leave Artsakh. That's one. They're going to come to Armenia homeless. That's going to create immigration problems. More Armenians are going to leave Armenia because of insecurity. There is not going to be as much participation of diaspora in Armenian affairs because of this situation. And it would be a huge blow to Armenian psyche to lose Artsakh. It's like losing an arm, for us. All these are irrelevant, Mr. Sakhr. In addition to, he did other things like mocking, interrupting, acting as a judge and jury, demanding that Pashinyan say sorry. I think he told him 4 times to say sorry. Okay? He ridiculed us. He was dismissive. He was impolite. This is not behavior one expects from a professional journalist. By the way, he has this reputation for being a tough, hard-nosed questioner. Well, he's selective. He can be tough. He can also be, when he sees power, he can be flexible. I watched his interview with International Monetary Fund Director Christine Lagarde, where he was all smiles, all compliments, and even held the hand of Christine Lagarde and stroked it. And when it ended, he said, it was great, and thank you, fantastic. It was like as if they are on a date or something. So the guy knows where the power lies, what he can get away with, right? By the way, he doesn't know any of these. When he comes on strong like that, he has a couple of writers and researchers who give him the questions, and he just blabs. He's a performer. It's a show. What he does is a show. It's a performance right off the bat. Even before he talks, there is that bam, music, drums or whatever at the beginning of his program. And then he comes on standing in an institution, big pillars, British institution, blah, blah. And he poses that question that Armenia is fighting old battles. It's all performance. He's also preening. He's sort of telling, see how tough I am, what a great job I'm doing.
I am glad Pashinyan subjected himself to this, because if this happens again, he will get better. And I hope other Armenian politicians see that how the rest of the world can take a stick and beat you over the head with it. It's not like you're in the National Assembly where you can just dismiss someone. So I guess some of this is
to back what you asked initially, Kevork, you said, how does the Western media or media handles the Artsakh-Azerbaijan conflict? It is a formula reporting. It has 3 steps in it, and it's repeated every time. Step number 1 of their news coverage is that there has been shooting, and each side is blaming the other. That's one. Second, they say Russia and the West, whoever, are advising restraint to both sides. That's number 2 step. Number 3 step is, this is the one, is deadly one, where they say Armenians are occupying Azeri land. And that's where the news story ends. This has been repeated since 1994, and I guess it will continue indefinitely. It's like a drone, not the drone the weapon drone, but the B drone. It's repeated every time. It's like a dance, 3-step dance. I'm talking about news coverage. But commentary is different. Commentary, as David Boyajian mentioned, a lot of it is hostile to us, and it originates in the Israeli-Azerbaijani alliance. They attack us upon the principle of my friend's enemy is my enemy. Because we are fighting the Azeris and they are friends with Azeris, then we are the bad guys. They are so extreme, though desperate, they even accuse us of anti-Semitism. This goes on every week. I mean, David Davidian and David Boyajian know this. When you follow media, no week passes without a journalist, so-called, or a think tank person, consultant from Washington, where they don't write something against us. We have to fight back. We'll talk about that later.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Jirair, that you wrote an article about one of these Jewish writers who continually attacks us, and she's. It's a very good article you wrote. You basically exposed her, and just within the past 24 hours, she has written something again. And David Davidian posted a very good comment under her article, which refutes her. Of course, this is David's forte. So congratulations to both of you, and I hope you keep up the attack.
Well, there are too many. There was another article about another lady in Los Angeles, the younger sister, I call her, of Granger. Her name is Adel Nazarian, who is not Armenian, who is Iranian, but of Jewish origin, now lives in Los Angeles. She's like Junior Granger, does the same numbers. And as I said, there are many, I'll say about maybe 20, 25 of these people who regularly do a number on us.
Western countries, you know, I think we have a lot, you know, I'm of two minds. I mean, I think that we do better in the media than we think we do, but we could do better. We don't have enough non-Armenian friends of those who take our side regarding Karabakh or Armenia. We don't have enough of those. We don't have enough of those non-Armenian friends. I wish we had more. But still, I think we do better than we think we do. I mean, for example, on the genocide issue, how many nations can say that they have kept their, that they had genocide inflicted on them 100 or so years ago, and yet this subject is still alive in the media and in world politics? I think Armenians are probably about the only one. So I think we have to pat ourselves on the back sometimes. But given that, you know, the U.S. State Department and the European Union and NATO have certain interests in Azerbaijan, it's kind of not surprising that we see a lot of pro-Azerbaijani or anti-Armenian articles and propaganda out there.
Mr. Davidian, can you identify examples of anti-Armenian content in the media, and what impact does this have on the general population?
Okay, well, yes, I can. I can list them. Before I list them, it's, you know, sort of, again, following what, you know, David and Jirair said. You know, I think it was, you know, Joseph Goebbels. Actually, I think it was Hitler, but, you know, Goebbels, they claim Goebbels said this. You know, if you repeat a lie long enough, you know, people will accept it as a fact. Okay. Now, the actual topics are usually a function of the prevailing news and politics that's going on. February is always Khojali, and it's always in conjunction with, it seems to always be in conjunction with, Armenians supported the Nazis in World War II. And that the Armenian generals that were around during World War I, came back to life in World War II. They fought with the Nazis and they killed 30,000 Jews in Crimea. Okay, well, the 30,000 number comes from the Turks from the early 1990s. They just made something up. If you ask them for a reference, it doesn't exist. That just does not exist anywhere. You can't find that. But if it's stated enough, it'll be a fact. That's why it's important to counter this stuff. There was a while, this was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe up to 5 years ago, where all you saw were these stories about Armenians selling nuclear material through Georgia into Russia someplace. They were, as Jirair would put it, pure journalistic garbage. There was no research, there was nothing done. For example, just a brief example. Armenians were accused, or Armenians were arrested in Georgia. Armenians were arrested in Georgia for selling uranium-238 to someone. Okay, there's two issues with that. When you actually go into the Georgian news, you find out there was something like 7 Georgians and 1 Armenian. Okay, and then you say uranium-238. Well, uranium-238 is basically natural uranium. That's what you find in the ground. So you're selling rocks. No one's going to even read a 4,000 word or an 8,000 word study unless, in fact, you wrote it and it's going to go to some institution. You're a think tank. The anti-Armenian articles are also sprinkled with Azerbaijan being a wonderland for Jews. And part of this comes from the Israeli public being a little skeptical of half of Israel's oil coming from a Shia majority country. They probably should be skeptical because Azerbaijan doesn't even have an embassy in Israel. And if they did have an embassy, there'd probably be a revolution in Azerbaijan. So they don't. So I think they go through some air travel company or something like this. Anyway, so there, because of the special relations between Azerbaijan and Israel, I think part of the package. I'm guessing part of the package, not guessing, I mean, there's actually evidence of this. Part of the package was a PR plan. And in September of 2015, members of the Israeli Knesset visited Baku, and they explicitly expressed their support for Azerbaijan and their disdain for whatever Armenians are doing. And it seemed to be a steady increase of these type of articles since September of 2015. Another item, Armenians are puppets of Russia, assuming, of course, that assumes Azerbaijan isn't, because the way the logic goes, if Armenians are puppets of Russia, and if Azerbaijanis are enemies of Armenians, thus Azerbaijan isn't a puppet of Russia, which is a fallacy. But you have to be a little bit of a critical thinker to be able to read through that. Armenians are pro-Iranian. We've pretty much spoken about that. And the one that always seems to come out is there was really ever no Armenia. It was all Azerbaijan. And we were just nice enough to give a land for these newcomers, these new arrivals to live on. So those are the themes that we commonly see.
Do you gentlemen have any final remarks and thoughts you would like to add?
We have to do something about this information war, media war against us. That's one. And the second thing is Armenians like to think that they or we are realistic people. Unfortunately, we are more emotional than realistic. And I'm referring to our relations with Russia. We should consider that all nations, all states, make their decisions according to their interests or their perceived interests. So Russia does what thinks is best for Russia. We cannot argue with that. That's one. That being the case, we should convince Russia and the Russian people that it is in the interest of Russia and the Russian people to be friendly with us, to be flexible with us, not to push us. We are not hostile to them. We have proved this over hundreds of years, and there is no reason why they should try hard tactics against us. This is a mission that Armenians of Armenia and Armenians of Russia should undertake, change their perceptions. As Davidian said, they consider us, many Russians, as the blacks, Russia's blacks, and they lump us with Azeris and with the Georgians as one entity, not to mention Dagestanis and the 40 nations residing in the Caucasus. They should remember our relations with their country and not lump us with the Azeris or anybody else. This is lazy thinking. So it is our job, Armenia's job, Armenians in Russia, to change the perception of Russians and the Russian government about the facts and about our contribution. I'm not going to list all the names of the people who have helped Russia in defense, in culture, in science, you name it. So this is an important task we should undertake. It would make life easier for Armenia and Armenians.
I think we should give us, as a final comment, I think Armenians should give themselves credit for the good things we have done in keeping our cause alive for over 100 years. I think this is relatively rare. We do get coverage. It's not always good. Sometimes it's very bad. We should be thankful that Armenia is an independent republic now, that Artsakh has won its independence against all odds, and that Armenia, a nation of maybe 3 million people, is facing a population of 82 million in Turkey and 10 million in Azerbaijan, and yet they hold out against all odds. So I think that we should see the good things that have happened, and have a positive psychology about it all going into the future.
If I can add a final comment, I thought this panel was great, and I want to, for those listening in, may I suggest that whatever you read, whatever you write, whatever you do, you critically evaluate the situation. Basically, try to minimize your biases, even listening to what we're saying on this call. Because we should be subject to the same thought processes as you would if you're trying to evaluate something that's written for Armenians, by Armenians, against Armenians, or whatever. So, if I could end there, that would be great.
We are genuinely surrounded, blockaded, Our population is declining. We are under attack every day. And I have never heard in the Western media any mention that this small country, blockaded, poor, with little resources and few people, is under attack, and yet it stands firm and is fighting for its existence. Well, this is a fact, and yet the media, Western media, is absolutely deaf and dumb to this fact.
Thank you all panelists and participants for your valuable time and for tuning in to this discussion. This panel has been organized by the Canada's Move Network. The funds for this video editing were donated to 1000plus.am, the Insurance Foundation for Servicemen in Armenia by Trofimova.works. If listeners are interested in supporting the Insurance Foundation for Servicemen, please visit 1000plus.am. Your contributions will aid wounded Armenian soldiers and military families in Armenia. Thank you all for joining in.